My name is Ethan, and if you've ever felt like you didn't belong in your own family, like you were just an extra piece that didn't quite fit anywhere, then you'll understand exactly what I'm about to tell you. Living in my house felt like showing up to your own funeral every weekend and being expected to smile through it. My parents never raised their hands at me. They didn't yell or scream, but every word they spoke carried this quiet, polished cruelty. It was always wrapped in politeness, which somehow made it worse. And every time they compared me to my sister Olivia, it felt like a reminder that I was just a version of a child they wished they could erase. Olivia was everything they wanted. Perfect grades, perfect smile, the kind of person who could mess up and still get applause for it. People naturally gravitated toward her. Everything she did seemed to shine. And me? I was the quiet one, the afterthought, the kid they described as doing his best when guests asked about me. Like I was some project still under construction. I figured it out early. Love in our house wasn't free. It had conditions, and praise. That was something Olivia always had enough of, while I was left counting scraps. For years, I believed I could earn it. That if I worked harder, tried more, did everything right, one day they'd look at me the way they looked at her. That day never came. Instead, there was the party. It was supposed to be my dad's 60th birthday. The whole extended family showed up. Aunts, uncles, cousins, even neighbors who still remembered me as a little kid. The place was loud, full of laughter. The smell of barbecue in the air mixed with that fake warmth families sometimes force. I showed up with a small gift, nothing expensive, just something thoughtful, an engraved pocket watch. I'd saved for it because my dad loved old, classic things. I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd see that I paid attention, that I knew him. Olivia arrived about 20 minutes later. She walked in wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than I paid for rent in a month. The room reacted instantly. People clapped, cheered, like someone famous had just stepped in. My mom rushed over and hugged her tightly. "Our pride and joy is here," she said, smiling like she meant every word. My dad laughed. The star of the family finally made it. And there I was, still holding that watch, standing there like I didn't exist. Dinner started, and the conversation flowed around Olivia like everything naturally revolved around her. Stories about her promotions, her vacations, her achievements, her boyfriend who worked in finance and probably called his parents just so they could praise him too. I tried to speak a few times, just to add something, anything, but every time I opened my mouth, someone talked over me. It felt like my voice didn't carry any weight, like it just disappeared the second it left me. At one point, Aunt Karen asked my parents how it felt to have such successful kids. My dad smiled, looked right at me for a second, then said, "Honestly, we wish Olivia was our only child, but what can you do?" The whole table laughed, like it was funny, like it didn't hit me right in the chest. Olivia gave that small, satisfied smile I'd seen 100 times growing up, that subtle twist of her lips that said she'd won again. My mom added, "He knows we're joking," and lightly patted my arm like I was some pet that didn't quite understand. I stared down at the tablecloth. The laughter kept ringing in my ears over and over again, like a broken loop. I didn't cry. Not then, not later. Tears would have been too small for what I was feeling. I just forced a polite smile, said, "Excuse me," and stood up. Then I walked outside into the night air, which felt colder than I expected. As I stepped away, I heard my cousin whisper, "Is he upset?" Someone else laughed and said, "Ethan's just sensitive." That was the last thing I heard before the door closed behind me. I drove home without turning on the radio. Just silence. Streetlights passed by like flickering frames of an old movie, and my mind replayed everything. Missed birthdays, achievements no one acknowledged, every maybe next time that never actually came. When I got home, I didn't throw anything. I didn't yell. I sat down at the table, and I started writing. Not revenge, not yet, just truth. Every moment they made me feel small. Every time Olivia was chosen over me. Every apology I made just to keep peace. Line after line after line. By the time it was around 3 a.m., the list had grown longer than I expected. And something shifted. The pain didn't disappear. It changed. It became clarity. If they wanted a life without me, I could give them exactly that. I'd spent my entire life trying to fit into a place that had already decided I didn't belong. So for the first time, I stopped trying. The next morning, I sent a simple message. Hey, I'm going to step back from family events for a while. I need to focus on myself. Take care. My mom replied almost immediately. Don't be dramatic. My dad didn't respond at all. Olivia sent a laughing emoji. I stared at the screen for a second. Then I turned off my phone, blocked their numbers, deleted the family group chat, and suddenly, the silence felt different. Not empty, earned. Over the next few days, I started clearing out my apartment. Old photos, messages, anything that tied me to them. It felt like pruning a tree that had been dying for years. At work, something shifted too. I stopped apologizing for every little thing. I started asking for what I deserved, and people actually listened. It turns out, when you stop trying to be liked, people start respecting you. I thought that was the end of it. But life had other plans. About a week later, I got a call from a lawyer I barely remembered. My grandfather's attorney. He told me that my grandfather's estate had finally been settled after years of legal issues. Then he said something that made me freeze. Ethan, your grandfather left you his house and property in Ashford. I blinked. Wait, just me? Yes, he said. Only you. The will is very specific. I didn't know what to say. My grandfather, he was different from the rest of them. He used to sneak me snacks when no one was looking. He'd sit with me and talk like I actually mattered. He once told me, "You see things differently. That's not a flaw. That's your strength." And now, he'd left me everything. The house, the land, even a small trust to maintain it. I drove there that same weekend. The place was quiet, surrounded by trees. Sunlight poured through the windows in a way that felt peaceful. For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged somewhere. And I didn't tell anyone. Not my parents, not Olivia, no one. Because part of me wanted to see what would happen when they realized the person they wished away had inherited the one thing they thought should have been theirs. That night, sitting in my grandfather's old chair, I poured myself a glass of his favorite whiskey. "You always saw me," I said out loud. The house creaked softly, and for a second, it almost felt like an answer. I decided I wasn't going to use what I'd been given to show off or prove a point. Not yet. But I also wasn't going to hide it forever. When the truth came out, it would come out on its own. The week after the party, I completely cut myself off. No calls, no texts, no showing up anywhere they might be. At first, the messages that came through were irritated. "Ethan, call us. Where are you? Stop acting like this." Then they shifted. "If you keep this up, don't expect us to come crawling." That one made me smile, because they still didn't understand. I wasn't waiting for them to crawl. I was already gone. I spent my days fixing up the house in Ashford, repainting walls, repairing old furniture, cleaning years of dust off things that had been left behind. And with every brush stroke, every small repair, I could feel their voices fading out of my head. One evening, I sat out on the porch, looking up at the sky. The stars stretched out above the trees, quiet and steady. And in that moment, I realized something strange. I didn't hate them anymore. I just didn't care. And somehow, that felt heavier than anger ever could. Because eventually they'd understand what they lost. Not someone weak, not someone to mock, but the only person who stayed despite everything. And now, I wasn't staying anymore. The silence lasted longer than I expected. And honestly, It was peaceful. No criticism, no passive-aggressive comments. No constant reminders that I was never enough. Just quiet mornings. The sound of birds outside the window. The old wooden floors creaking as I walked across them. It felt like the house itself was waking up after being ignored for too long. I painted the walls, fixed the old record player, started cooking again, and every time I breathed in that faint cedar smell, it felt like something inside me was healing. A few weeks passed before I heard anything new. The first message came from my aunt, a voicemail, her tone sharp, almost excited in that way people get when they're sharing bad news disguised as concern. "Ethan, did you hear? Your dad lost his job." I stared at my phone for a second. Not shocked, just not surprised. My dad had always been confident, too confident, the kind of man who believed he couldn't make mistakes, that the rules didn't apply to him. Turns out, his company found out he'd been falsifying expense reports. It wasn't loud or dramatic, just quiet consequences. He lost his position and his reputation. I didn't react, didn't call, didn't comment. I poured myself coffee and went back to sanding the porch railing. Life didn't need my help correcting things. A few days later, another message came, this time from my cousin Jake. "Bro, Olivia's engagement is off." I almost dropped the mug in my hand. Apparently, her fiancé had found out she'd been lying about money. She told him she had a trust fund coming from our grandfather's estate. She didn't, because everything had gone to me. But she'd been talking about it for months, building this image. And when he realized it wasn't real, he walked out in the middle of dinner, left her sitting there in front of a full restaurant, crying. I sat on the porch that night, listening to the quiet hum of insects in the distance, and I remembered something my grandfather once told me. Karma doesn't need your help. It just needs time. Within a week, my mom called. First time in months. First time in. Her voice sounded different, less certain. "Ethan, we need to talk." "What about?" "Don't do this," she said. "We're family." "You made it clear that family wasn't guaranteed." She exhaled slowly. "We didn't mean it like that. You know how your father jokes." "I know exactly how he jokes," I said. "That's why I left." There was a pause. Then her voice dropped. "We're in trouble." I stayed quiet. "Your dad lost his job. Olivia's engagement fell apart. We might lose the house." "I hope things work out." Her tone snapped. "Ethan, this isn't funny. It's not supposed to be. It's just what's happening." Then her voice broke. "Please, we need your help." I closed my eyes for a second. Years of swallowing things. Years of pretending it didn't hurt. "You said you wished I didn't exist," I said quietly. "So start living like I don't." And I ended the call. My hands were shaking. Not from guilt, from release. Like something heavy had finally fallen off me. After that, the messages didn't stop. Relatives. Olivia. Everyone. "Can we talk? Please answer." We didn't mean it. I didn't respond. They built their lives around the idea that I didn't matter. Now they were dealing with what that actually meant. I focused on the house, on building something real. My grandfather had left behind journals, old notebooks filled with his handwriting. I started reading them, and I found pages about me. "Ethan sees things differently," he wrote. "That's not a flaw. That's a gift this family never understood." I sat there holding that page, and I cried. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet tears. The kind that don't ask for sympathy, only peace. Around that time, the lawyer called again. "The transfer's complete," he said. "Everything is now legally yours." "All of it?" "Yes, including the financial accounts tied to the property." I thanked him. Then I sat there staring out at the old oak trees. And it hit me. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was free. Word started spreading. Relatives began calling, acting casual, pretending they just wanted to check in. But I knew what they were really asking. "We heard something about your grandfather's estate." Just memories, I said. They laughed awkwardly, because rumors were already filling in the rest. Within a month, things got worse for my family. Debts surfaced, credit cards maxed out. Olivia moved back home after losing her apartment, and every photo they posted looked off. The smiles didn't reach their eyes. I didn't need revenge. I just watched life balance itself. One afternoon, I drove back to their house, not to confront them, just to see if I felt anything. I didn't. The curtains were closed, the yard overgrown, the mailbox overflowing with unpaid bills. For a moment, I thought about knocking. Then I remembered every time I stood outside that same house as a kid, waiting to feel included, waiting to feel seen. I'd already waited long enough. I turned around and left, back to Ashford. That night, sitting by the fireplace my grandfather built, I lifted my glass slightly. "You were right," I said quietly, because he once told me something I didn't understand back then. People who wish you gone never expect to be the ones left behind. And that's what this was. Not revenge, just absence. And that absence echoed louder than anything I could have said. The next morning I found an envelope by my door. No return address, just my name, my mom's handwriting. Inside was a letter, messy, uneven. "We're sorry, Ethan. We didn't understand what we were doing until it was too late. Please come home." I read it twice, then folded it carefully and placed it next to my grandfather's photo. "This is home," I said quietly. The house creaked softly, like it agreed. For the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing approval. I wasn't trying to earn my place. I just existed, whole, calm, unbothered. And somewhere out there, the family that once wished I didn't exist was finally learning what it meant to live without me. A few months passed before everything finally came crashing together. It started with a post online, some distant relative congratulating me on inheriting the Ashford estate. Within hours, my phone exploded. Missed calls, messages, voicemails. My dad's voice, sharp and confused. "Ethan, why didn't you tell us about the inheritance?" Then another message, angrier. "That house was supposed to go to your sister." I laughed, not loudly, just enough to feel it. Because for once, I wasn't the joke. By that evening, they were at my gate. All three of them, standing in the rain. My dad looked furious. My mom looked like she might fall apart. Olivia stood there gripping her phone like it could fix everything. "Open the door," my mom called out. "We just want to talk." I pressed the intercom. "You've said enough already." My dad stepped forward. "This isn't fair. You manipulated him." "I didn't manipulate anyone," I said. "He just saw me." Olivia tried to soften her voice. "Come on, Ethan. This isn't you. You don't even like places like this." "Maybe you never knew me," I replied. My dad slammed his hand against the gate. "We're your family." You made sure I forgot that. Rain poured harder. Thunder rolled behind them. For a moment, no one spoke. Then my mom whispered, "Please, we're sorry." "You were sorry enough to say it in front of everyone," I said. Her voice broke. "We've lost everything." "No," I said. "You lost me. Everything else came after." Olivia's voice snapped. "You're cruel." "No," I said. "I'm finally honest." They stood there a moment longer, then turned and left. I watched until their headlights disappeared into the dark. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I felt guilty, because I felt light, like something I'd been carrying for years had finally burned away. The next morning, the lawyer called again. "There's one last thing," he said. "What is it?" "Your grandfather left a sealed letter for your parents. I was instructed to give it to you only if they came asking for help." My heart paused for a second. "They came." "I figured," he said. He emailed it. I opened it. "To my son and his wife," it began. "If you're reading this, then you finally learned that love isn't something you can withdraw and give out only when it benefits you. You spent years investing only in perfection, forgetting that family is built on acceptance. I left everything to Ethan not because he succeeded, but because he endured. You had everything, except the one thing you chose to lose. If you want him back, start by facing yourselves. I stared at the letter for a long time. Then I sent it. Not out of spite, just truth. Days passed. Then one evening, there was a knock. Soft, careful. I opened the door. Olivia stood there, alone, her eyes swollen. Makeup ruined. She held the letter. "He loved you more than anyone," she said quietly. "We all knew it, and we hated you for it." I didn't interrupt. "Dad's sick, Mom can't sleep, the house is gone, and all we do is talk about you." "Now you know what it feels like," I said. "To be talked about, but never talked to." She swallowed hard. "Can we start over?" I looked at her. "Do you remember that night at the party? When you smiled?" She nodded. "That's when I stopped needing a family." She didn't argue, just nodded slowly, then left. A week later, another letter came. From my parents. "We're sorry. You were always enough. We hope you find peace, even if it's not with us." I placed it next to my grandfather's photo. I already did. Months passed. They moved away. Olivia started over somewhere else, and I stayed. Built something real. People sometimes ask me if I forgave them. I did, but forgiveness doesn't mean going back. It just means letting go. A year later, the lawyer contacted me one last time. "There was a final condition," he said. "When you pass, the property goes to a local orphan foundation, not your family." I laughed, because it made perfect sense. Not revenge, not anger. Something better. A legacy that breaks the cycle. I stepped outside as the sun set over the trees. "You knew exactly what you were doing," I said quietly, because somehow, he did. My family once wished for a life without me, and when they got it, it broke them. Now they'd have to live knowing the person they pushed away turned his pain into something that would outlast them. That night, I locked the gate. Not out of anger, out of peace. The house didn't carry their weight anymore. Only proof that even someone unwanted can become unforgettable. And if you ever ask me whether revenge feels good, I'll tell you the truth. It doesn't. But freedom? Freedom feels exactly the same.